In this lesson, we're going to be just reviewing the basics of exponents, but we're going to focus on when we need parentheses and what they do, as well as exponents within order of operations. So exponents tell us that we have repeated multiplication. So in number 1, we have 4 being multiplied by itself, so the base would be 4. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them being multiplied. So it's to the 5th power. So that tells us that we're going to multiply 4 by itself 5 times. And we also have 7 being multiplied by itself 2 times. On number 2, we have 2/9 being multiplied by itself 2 times. However, we have to be careful with fractions because if I just write it the way I do right now, this could be misinterpreted to mean just 2 times 2 in the numerator and then the 9 on the denominator, not getting the exponent of 2. So to make it clear that we need that whole fraction to the 2nd power and not just the 2, we put fractions in parentheses. So we also have 3/5, again, fraction is going to go in parentheses, to the 3rd power. That's being multiplied by itself 3 times. And on number 3, we have -8 being multiplied by itself 3 times. But similar to the fractions, when we have a negative sign that we want to be repeated, so we have that negative and the 8 being repeated, I need to put that in parentheses so I show that I need that whole thing, -8, being repeated, not just the 8. So for example, if I just have -8 to the 3rd, this really would represent I have the single negative sign and then I have 3 8s, 1, 2, 3, and that's not what we meant. So if we want a negative to be repeated, it needs to go inside parentheses. And then on number 3, we also have that times 5 at the end. Now, there's just one single 5, so we don't have to have an exponent, but every number does have an exponent. So if it's just 5, then it's really 5 to the 1st power. You can choose to write the 1 or not write the 1, it's up to you. Next set of directions, we're going to go backwards. So we have -4 to the 3rd. Notice that -4 is inside the parentheses. That means that I need that negative and that 4 being repeated. So -4, another -4, and another -4. That's what that 3 tells us. And then I need 3 being multiplied by itself 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The direction said write without exponents. It doesn't tell us to solve, so that is all we need to do. On number 5, unlike on number 4, this 7 is not in parentheses, so the negative does not get repeated. So we just bring down our negative sign, and then this tells us that I have 5 7s being repeated. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I also have 6 being repeated 3 times. On number 6, I have the fraction, the whole fraction, 5 7s being repeated. Now when I'm expanding out a fraction, it's very clear that I have 5 7s because I'm writing 5 7s. So it's going the opposite way, we got to be careful. However, we could choose to put this and leave this in parentheses, and that's going to be an equivalent answer. Then I have 4 to the 2nd power, so 2 4s. Now we're going to start evaluating, and evaluate means to solve. So we are going to solve these expressions. So this means I have 2 being multiplied by itself 5 times. And because I can multiply in any order I want, I can do whatever is going to make it easiest for me. So this is the method I'm going to choose. You could always do a different way. I'm going to multiply 2 times 2 is 4, and 2 times 2 is 4. So I haven't used this last 2 yet. 4 times 4 is 16. Bring down that last 2 again, and then 16 times 2 is 32. Number 8, again, that negative sign is not in parentheses, which means this 4, the exponent of 4, is just on the 3, not on the negative. So think about what is that exponent touching? It is just touching the 3. So I'm going to have a negative sign, and then I'm going to have 3 repeated 4 times. And again, the way I'm going to choose to multiply is 3 times 3 and 3 times 3. Then I can multiply my 9 times 9. But then I still have this negative sign that needs to keep dropping down. And then because on number 9 it is in parentheses, that means that whole thing is being repeated. So I have a negative 5 being multiplied by another negative 5. So that's going to give us a positive 25. Number 10, we've got this fraction being repeated. So 2/3 times 2/3 times 2/3. And remember how to multiply fractions. We're just going to multiply straight across the numerator, straight across the denominator. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, and 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. Okay, number 11, we have it in parentheses, so again that negative does repeat. And then I also have 2 2's, so I can multiply negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, and then I still have this 2 out here I have not used. And positive 9 times negative 6 is negative 54. Still have to multiply that 2 at the end, so I get negative 108. On number 12, the negative is not in parentheses, so I just have the negative. Then I have 5 being repeated 3 times, and then I have a times 2 at the end. I'm just going to choose to multiply in order this time, so negative 5 times negative 5 is negative 25, and negative 25 times 5 is negative 125. And that has to be multiplied by 2 still, and we get negative 250 for our solution. And then we're going to do some order of operations problems. So we're going to insert our values. So x is negative 3 and y is a positive 4. Now, right now the x here is not in parentheses. It's in these parentheses, but it does not have its own parentheses, because we don't know what x is right now. But once x is at negative 3, whatever x is gets multiplied 4 times. So we need to repeat this whole thing because this whole thing is x. So that negative 3 has to get repeated 4 times. Another way to think of that is if we write this out, x to the 4th means x times x times x times x. Then I can replace each of those x's with that negative 3. So negative 3, negative 3, negative 3, and another negative 3. So I'm going to multiply that out. That's 9, 9, so I get 81. So this x to the 4 part is 81. We have a minus sign next. And then 5 to the 2nd is 25, because that means 5 times 5. This is still in parentheses. I have a plus 3y. When they're next to each other, that means times. So this means 3 times y, but y is 4, so it means 3 times 4, and that's going to be 12. So then we're going to do our 81 minus 25, and that is going to give us 56. And then we still have that plus 12. And then 56 plus 12, we get 68 for our final answer. And then on our last one, so let's first write out what this means. This means I have negative 8 squared, means I have negative a times another negative a, and a is 3. So negative, and then I replace a with 3, then I have a negative, and I replace a with 3, and then negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So this first part here is 9 plus, and then I've got parentheses here, so that's 15 minus, and then I have to find out what b to the 3rd means. So that's b times b times b, and each b gets replaced with a negative 2. So negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2 is 4. 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So we already had our 15 minus, and now we know that b to the 3rd is going to be negative 8. And one way we can handle this minus a negative is we can change this to adding the opposite. So then I have 9 plus, and then 15 plus 8 is 23. And 9 plus 23, we get 32 for that answer.